Sisters and brothers, it's a good thing, the second reading night in 2 Corinthians, I don't know if you know the background of it. I'm not going to preach on it, but you know what the background is of this? St. Paul's taking up a collection. That's exactly what the backdrop is. He's taking up a collection from the Corinthians, who are a wealthier community, the community in Jerusalem that was poor. That's why he uses the line, though Jesus was rich, he emptied himself and became poor, so that you could be enriched by his poverty. Beautiful way background. In any case, I'm much more interested in the gospel reading tonight and a few comments on religious freedom that I wanted to make, like all the bishops asking, one of the bishops asking people to do that this weekend. The Gospel of St. Mark, we're going to be reading for basically the rest of the liturgical year. It's the shortest Gospel, only 16 chapters. St. Mark is he's a very brilliant theologian and catechist, but writing is not one of his gifts in terms of how ancient peoples thought writing should be. His nickname in the early church is Stuffy Fingers. You get a sense of it tonight in the Gospel about the way he treats the disciples when the woman in the crowd touches Jesus. Jesus starts looking around and he says, "Who touched me?" You hear the response of the disciples. It's toned down in Matthew and Luke's Gospel, the same thing. In Mark, if you read the Greek, it's really, what do you mean, who touched you? You see the crowd around, what do you think? These people are uncouth. I mean the disciples, not the crowd. Mark does not suppress the information of how clueless the disciples are at this point in Jesus' life. And the writing is a little bit rough. But boy, is the point made well, right? The point is made very well. And there's an eyewitness account behind this. Peter, James, John, who were with Jesus, who knows? Mark writes the Gospel some years later. But how can you tell about vivid eyewitness account? The use of Aramaic. They remember what Jesus said to the little girl, Talitha Kumi. That's not Greek, that's Aramaic. So that there's a vivid encounter that's taking place. The one other thing we notice about Mark's ability to be a catechist is now the episodes that he recounts today may be the way it happened. However, Mark loves to do something we call sandwich construction. He starts an episode, he changes mid-course, and then goes back to the episode. It's all throughout his gospel. Some people think it's his technique for catechizing, because the centerpiece of what happens, the centerpiece of the 2 pieces of bread in the sandwich, is a beautiful account of Jesus' compassion and the healing touch to a young girl whose father's at his wit's end, and had to be at his wit's end because he would never, as a synagogue official, have gone to Jesus if he weren't at his wit's end. But that beautiful episode is the bread around the most incredible thing, that Jesus in the crowd senses the healing touch of someone who approaches him in faith. That's why he wheeled around in the crowd and said, "Who touched me?" People were bumping into him all over. Notice that Jesus is walking in the public square, and he felt no difficulty of working even a miracle of healing in the middle of the public square. The import of the episode tonight is people keep asking, who is this? Who's the identity of this man from Nazareth? The apostles are as astonished as Jairus' family. And the beautiful line in the cure of the woman with the hemorrhages is, your faith has saved you. You're healed, but your faith has saved you. It's extremely important. Mark is trying to build up that Jesus is not just some bread and circus guy. His desire for healing is that the physical healing becomes a sign of something further he wants to do. That's why he tells the woman with the hemorrhage, your faith in me has saved you. And the physical cure is a way for you to help understand that. Jesus didn't cure everyone he met. That is physically. But everyone who encountered him began to see anew what was crucial, what was important, what they lacked, and what Jesus gave. the healing touch of Jesus with the three apostolic witnesses, Peter, James, and John, is very important, friends. It's one of the things that happens in the history of the Christian faith. Once it can come out of hiding after a couple hundred years, what's the first thing Christians did? This is true. You go to areas of what is now Turkey, Cappadocia, and all, they set up hospices. They set up hospitals. They set up clinics. A great guy who did it, his name was Basil. Basil the Great, we call him. In the Eastern Empire, Eastern Roman Empire, for 300 years, anytime someone set up something in terms of social service, hospital, or education, they called it a basileia, which is the Greek word for Basil. It's a Basil thing. It's what Basil Christians do. They do these things. They're in the public square to do these things because that's the way how we interpret what Jesus asks of us. I mention this because from that point on, the church has always been involved both in worship in our buildings and in the public square in one way or another, usually in terms of social service, hospitals, and education. In this archdiocese, I'm very proud to say that the San Jose Clinic in downtown Houston is the oldest continuing existing free clinic of the Catholic Church in the United States, 1920. Always existed. It's there because of the great beauty of doctors and nurses who come freely give their services to people who don't have the funds. They get good care. All right, let's bring that out as an example. Now, sisters and brothers, we do things in our buildings, right? Our churches. There are a number of people in the last 30 years, even in this beautiful country, the United States, I mentioned this to you before the 4th of July, who think that's great, and that religion is freedom of worship. Well, it is. But if you look at the First Amendment of the Constitution, it doesn't say freedom of worship. It says religious liberty, which is slightly different. It includes all that. It also includes that religious liberty is a good in the public square. Obviously, in the United States, we have no established religion because we have lots of different religions. But religious liberty in itself is considered a good. It's not something that is like joining the polo club. And by the way, there are people now who are jurists who want to equate religious liberty with the liberty of nonprofits that are clubs and groups. Now, sisters and brothers, this case is a very interesting phenomenon, some of which we have watched in the United States just the last year over a question of our healthcare law, where the Department of Health and Human Services has said that there are certain services that are to be required of everyone, and we will give a very limited exception to religious institutions. And the exception they gave, Jesus wouldn't even qualify tonight in what he did. In doubt. It's very narrow. A church like this, in that sense, I could receive it. Priests, some Catholic school teachers, no hospitals, no colleges, not San Jose Clinic. It's very worrisome to us, friends, because the coercive aspects of federal law always is coercive. When it starts defining religious liberty that narrowly and without much conscience exception, that puts us all, makes us all worried. Friends, I'm not here tonight to give a major exposition of this. I simply want our Catholic people in Galveston-Houston to be alert. We have to be alert. Whatever it may be, a number of our differences about all kinds of things. I'm very uninterested in political questions per se. I'm very interested in moral questions. That's what bothers me. That if indeed we are being forced to be redefined by others about who we are, we don't do hospitals to make a profit. We don't do hospitals for that reason. We do hospitals because of the mission of Jesus, like in tonight's gospel. We don't set up colleges and universities for any other reason than it's part of our mission. Despite the mission of celebrating the sacraments in our churches, we consider all of it of one piece. So therefore, friends, this is a summer night. We don't want to listen to the bishop harangue or not. I simply want to let you recognize. You can read stuff in our website. There are all kinds of wonderful things we can do. But I want us to be aware and to pray and think a little bit of this, sisters and brothers. What it means right now. What it means that we indeed are people of faith and that we love our church buildings, but we also don't think that's only where we belong. That we think we have to be in the public square. There are other people in the public square who are highly secularized. They belong in the public square, yes. Well, let's fight it out fair and square. Don't let us be taken in by a presupposition that says you are to be limited to just this. In any case, those are some thoughts I have tonight as we reflect on this beautiful gospel of Jesus in the public square 2,000 years ago. He's present now. His healing touch now is given through his body, the church. His healing touch comes now through the sacrament. His healing touch comes through us. We're all he has. So, sisters and brothers, coming to the table of the Lord tonight, let us pray the Lord will make us grateful for the gift of religious liberty, which is ours in our country, in the freest country in the world. Let's make sure we maintain ourselves, and that freedom is respected. God bless you.